Ukrainians in the south assemble forces, take under fire control the rest of Kherson region and a part of Crimea, and prepare to cross Dnipro river for the ultimate counteroffensive. And to make it easier for them, Russians are thinking about relocating their forces from the south to a much more desirable locations. And because of this, we will most likely have the third front line opening in the very nearest future in the Zaporozhye region, where fighting will be extremely complicated for both countries. But more about all of this in just a couple of minutes. What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. And our first video comes to us from the border between Ukraine and Belarus, where we can see this wall that Ukrainian forces are building in Volyn region. Next we go to Zhytomyr, where Russian caliber missile has been spotted passing by. Next we go to the capital of Ukraine, Kiev, where we can see another Russian missile. And reportedly, this one has been launched from the territory of Russia right next to the border with Belarus. Most of you already know about the critical condition of Ukraine's energy infrastructure, and because of this, the authorities have to shut down the electricity in pretty much most cities. And right here we have another picture from Kiev at night. In several seconds I will give you the explanation by Russians why they are doing these mass shellings against Ukraine. But for now, let's just really quick see some more footage from only 3 more places. And so our first video comes to us from Dnipro, where according to Prime Minister of Ukraine Denis Shmyhal, Russians targeted Yuzhmash factory, and because of the blast wave, several neighboring residential buildings have been affected as well. Next we go to Zaporozhye, and as you can see right here, a Russian missile arrived precisely into a residential building. And finally, we have a picture of a destroyed electrical transformer. And I apologize, I do not have engineering degree, so if this is not the correct name for this piece of equipment, please let me know in the comments how it is really called. But long story short, it has been said that this transformer was responsible for supplying the power for more than 400,000 Ukrainians in the west of the country. According to the representative of the General Staff of Ukraine, Oleksiy Gromov, today Russia launched 16 missiles and 5 drones against Ukraine. And according to Russia, specifically to Dmitry Peskov, the reason why Russia is targeting the energy infrastructure of Ukraine is to force President Zelensky to cooperate and to start negotiations. Okay, I guess. To be honest, I don't think this is going to work, and the result is going to be quite the opposite. Because it's like, imagine, your neighbor is constantly harassing and attacking you, and then they wonder why you don't want to talk with them. But okay. In the nearest future, I expect both good and bad news from Ukraine, and if you don't want to miss these updates, please consider liking this video and subscribing to my channel. You can also follow me on Instagram and send me a message, and I will reply to you. Alright, and before we talk about increased activity of Ukrainians in the south, allow me to quickly give you a very brief update from the east. And according to the report by the Institute for the Study of War, Ukrainians continue their counteroffensive along Svatove-Kreminna road, while the main focus of Russians remain the same, next to Bakhmut, Avdiivka and Vuhledar. And then on this map we can see the changes in territorial control over the last 24 hours. And first of all, Russians were able to enter Pavlivka. And if you remember from my yesterday's episode, Russians reportedly used a lot of inexperienced new recruits to capture this barely important settlement. Next we go to Opytne, and as you can see right here, Russians were able to advance a little bit as well. Next we go to another Opytne, and this one is closer to Bakhmut, and as you can see right here, Russians were also able to advance. And finally, as we move to the north to Svatove-Kreminna road, we can see that Ukrainians were able to push Russians a little bit further and contest a part of Ploshanka. According to the same report, the morale of Russian soldiers, especially those in Luhansk and Donetsk regions, is extremely low. And I mean, what else would you expect when you have statements like this, such as for example from the governor of Orlovskaya region, Andrei Klitschkov, who said that those mobilized Russian soldiers who are not satisfied with the quality of Russian uniform should stop complaining and just buy their own. And well, we now have some yet unconfirmed reports that Russians are thinking to relocate some of its southern forces to the east to replace these low morale soldiers. And I will talk about this potential relocation in more details very soon, because then we have another statement by Russian infiltrator and the head of Luhansk region, Leonid Pasechnik, who is saying that there is no panic in Luhansk and there is no need for evacuation. I definitely heard it somewhere else about no panic. It's like, you know, first they say there is no panic and no need for evacuation, and then suddenly they announce the evacuation for civilians, just moments before they goodwill gesture the territory. And I mean, yeah, Luhansk is very significant for Russians, and as for now it is pretty protected, like I said, for now. But let's see, because this no panic statement is pretty funny. Right, and now let's talk about the situation in the south, the preparations of Ukrainians to cross Dnipro river, and the partisans in Novokakhovka. And first of all, we have another picture from Kherson region of abandoned Russian personnel carrier BMP-2, which was taken by Ukrainians. Next, there is a video from Chernobyevka airport, and as you can see right here, yet another Russian helicopter Mi-24 has been seized by Ukrainians, which just once again confirms the status of Russia as one of the biggest military donors to Ukraine. And then right here we have a picture of the way Ukrainians deal with the problem of destroyed bridges in Kherson region. So they pretty much installed this temporary mechanized bridge, and that's it, simple as that, the military vehicles are ready to cross. And reportedly, more and more Ukrainians, along with their military vehicles, are assembling closer to Dnipro river. Today I have so much more footage, which includes Ukrainians dropping grenades, the work of snipers, first-person counteroffensive and liberation videos, and obviously none of this I can use on YouTube. So I uploaded some of it to my Discord, and the rest will be available on my Patreon. And if you want to see these unacceptable photos and videos, the links will be down below. Right, let's get back to Ukrainians preparing to cross Dnipro river and trying to launch the ultimate counteroffensive in Kherson region. At this very moment, Ukrainians are finalizing their stabilization activities in Kherson, and according to the General Staff of Ukraine, Ukrainian forces are mainly assembling on the right side of Dnipro river. And thanks to HIMARS, this allows them to establish the fire control over the rest of Kherson region, as well as a part of logistical routes to Crimea. And this logistics I'm talking about is the road to Armyansk, road from Novokakhovka, and road to Khenichensk. And based on everything that is happening right now, there is a very big chance that Ukrainians are preparing to ultimately cross Dnipro river. Because just think about it, what was happening in the past? First of all, Ukrainians recapture a territory, then they gain a foothold, then they do these stabilization measures, then they start destroying the logistical routes and the headquarters of Russians from the distance, and then the ultimate counteroffensive. So it's like move closer, force Russians to retreat, and then move closer. And I mean, if it works, don't change it, because right now Ukrainians are in the stage to force Russians to retreat. And to make it even easier for Ukrainians, Russians are reportedly thinking to relocate their southern forces to more desirable locations, such as for example Zaporozhye region, the east and the north. And allegedly, Russians want to double down on their offensive in the east and open the new front line in Zaporozhye region. And just hold a little bit more, we will talk about this in more details very soon. Because right here in this video we can see Russians who are trying to escape here Kherson and cross Dnipro river just to be faced with the friendly fire by their own comrades, which is, as you can imagine, contributes even more to the low morale of the Russian soldiers. Unfortunately, I'm only able to show this small part of this video, but the full version with sound will be available on my Patreon. And then we have another report of the activity of Ukrainian partisans in Nova Kakhovka. As for now, the city is still under the control by Russians, so most likely these partisans were just collecting the intelligence data, so it will be much easier for Ukrainians during the actual counteroffensive. And so Russians, taught by previous experiences, most likely realize that sooner or later Ukrainians will start their advancement in Kherson region. And so this time they might think to start retreating much sooner, which is also indirectly confirmed by Alexei Gromov, who thinks that in case Russians decide to withdraw their forces from Kherson, most likely these soldiers will be used in Zaporozhye region in the east, or even to attack Ukraine from Belarus. But one thing is for sure: if Russians decide to take out their forces from Kherson, guess what will happen? Exactly, it will be less protected. And as a result, Ukrainians who reportedly already prepared to cross Dnipro river will have it much easier at liberating the rest of Mykoliav and Kherson region. And this is where it gets ugly, because if you remember from my previous episode, Russians are planning to open the third front line in Zaporozhye region. And today we have a little bit more details, specifically that allegedly Russians will be concentrating their efforts during the first stages against Hulyaye Pole, and their main directions of attacks will be against Pavlograd and Vasilkovo. And as you can see, it pretty much perfectly correlates with my previous statements that those Russians being relocated from the south will be most likely used in Zaporozhye and Donetsk front lines. And basically, Russians are thinking to sacrifice the rest of failing Kherson region in order to have better chances in the east of Ukraine. There are also some crazy assumptions that Russians might resume their offensive all the way from Kharkov, and in combination with quote-quote successful offensive from Zaporozhye, they will be able to meet their ultimate goal, the capturing of Donetsk. And the only thing I can say here is, good luck! I will be closely monitoring the situation in the Zaporozhye region, and if you also want to stay updated, once again, just please subscribe to my channel. It only takes one click. And by the way, have you realized that we haven't heard much from Putin recently? That's very interesting, right? And if you want to support my work, please consider becoming my channel member, use a PayPal link, or become my Patreon, where you will receive additional content. All the other useful links can be found to the right and down below. Thank you so much for your attention, товарищи, and see you tomorrow.